The chilling crimes of Wade Wilson. The quiet neighbor. The small town of Brimfield was known for its tranquility, where nothing ever seemed to disturb the peace. Nestled among oak trees and well-kept gardens, the houses were a testament to suburban serenity. Among these homes stood the Wilson residence, an unassuming house with a neatly trimmed lawn and a white picket fence. It was a place where neighbors waved in passing and children played freely. Yet behind the facade of normalcy, something sinister was brewing. Wade Wilson had moved into Brimfield a year ago, but despite his seemingly amiable nature, there was always something unsettling about him. He was a tall, gaunt man with an unblinking gaze and a demeanor that, while polite, carried an air of distance. No one knew much about him, and the few who had tried to make conversation were met with curt replies and an abrupt change of subject. The first sign that something was amiss came one crisp autumn morning. As the sun rose and the town came alive with its usual activities, Mrs. Thompson, who lived 2 doors down, noticed something strange. Wade's garage door was open, revealing the interior cluttered with various tools and boxes. Among the mess, a peculiar item stood out, a large, dark stain on the concrete floor, which had been hastily covered with a tarp. Mrs. Thompson frowned, a shiver running down her spine as she tried to dismiss the uneasy feeling in her gut. It wasn't just the stain that was troubling. It was Wade's behavior. He had become increasingly reclusive, rarely seen outside except for brief, hurried trips to his car. He avoided eye contact, and his interactions with others were marked by a palpable tension. Whispers of concern began circulating among the neighbors, but no one had any concrete evidence to warrant suspicion. After all, Wade had the right to his privacy, and Brimfield was a place where everyone was entitled to live their life without interference. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky, a series of unsettling events began to unfold. John Parker, a local mechanic, was working late in his garage when he heard a faint, rhythmic noise coming from the direction of the Wilson residence. It was almost like a low thumping sound, growing louder and more insistent. Curiosity piqued, John stepped outside and strained to hear better. The sound stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to envelop the neighborhood. As John was about to return to his work, he noticed Wade's car parked outside with the headlights on. He had never seen the car's lights left on like that before. Hesitant, but driven by a growing sense of unease, John approached the vehicle. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, and inside, he saw something that made his heart race. Streaks of red on the seat and a crumpled piece of paper with an incomprehensible scrawl. Panic set in, and John hurried back to his garage, trying to convince himself that he had misunderstood the situation. But the feeling of dread lingered, gnawing at him like a persistent itch. He decided to contact the local sheriff, but as he reached for his phone, he hesitated. It could be nothing, a false alarm, or it could be something far more sinister. Meanwhile, as the night deepened, Wade's reclusive behavior became even more pronounced. The blinds in his windows were drawn tight, and no lights illuminated the interior of his home. The town's peaceful facade was beginning to crack, revealing a disturbing undercurrent that no one had anticipated. The following morning, the tranquility of Brimfield was shattered by a new development. Mrs. Thompson's daughter, Emma, who worked as a waitress at the local diner, reported that Wade had been in the diner the previous night. She recalled seeing him sitting in a corner booth, engaged in a hushed conversation with an unfamiliar man. The interaction had seemed odd. Wade's face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly. The man, who had left abruptly, was described as having an unkempt appearance and a dark, shadowy demeanor. As the day wore on, the town's growing unease reached a boiling point. The normally tight-knit community was now filled with hushed conversations and speculative glances. Everyone was on edge, and the once calm and friendly neighborhood was now a place where suspicion and fear festered. By nightfall, the whispers had turned into outright speculation. Some neighbors had started to believe that Wade might be involved in something criminal, though no one could pinpoint exactly what. The strange noises, the mysterious stains, and Wade's odd behavior were pieces of a puzzle that no one had yet managed to solve. The tension in Brimfield was palpable. Every creak of a floorboard, every passing shadow, seemed to heighten the sense of dread that had settled over the town. The Wilson residence, once just another house on the street, had become the epicenter of an unsettling mystery. And as the darkness of night settled over Brimfield, one thing was clear. The town's peace had been irrevocably disturbed, and the truth about Wade Wilson was waiting to be unearthed. Shadows of suspicion. The town of Brimfield had awoken to an atmosphere thick with suspicion and unease. As the sun rose, casting long shadows across the quiet streets, the residents went about their daily routines with a palpable tension in the air. Conversations were laced with whispers about Wade Wilson, and even the most mundane activities were overshadowed by the growing mystery. The local sheriff, Sheriff Daniels, had been inundated with calls and complaints from worried citizens. Reluctant to dismiss the mounting concerns, he decided to pay a visit to Wade's home, hoping to address the apprehensions that had taken root in the community. Accompanied by Deputy Harris, the sheriff approached the Wilson residence with a mixture of professionalism and unease. Wade answered the door, his face a mask of polite curiosity. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm, as he greeted the sheriff and deputy with a forced smile. "Good morning, officers. How can I help you?" Sheriff Daniels tried to sound as nonchalant as possible, despite the nagging feeling that something was off. "Morning, Mr. Wilson. We've had a few reports from the neighborhood about some unusual activity around your house. We're just here to check things out and make sure everything is all right." Wade's eyes flickered briefly, betraying a hint of something fear, guilt, or perhaps just a fleeting irritation. "Unusual activity? I'm not sure what you mean. Everything here is perfectly normal." The sheriff nodded, noting the slight edge in Wade's tone. "We've heard about some strange noises and saw a few unusual things in your garage. We're just doing our due diligence." Wade's forced smile never wavered as he led the officers through his home. The interior was immaculate, meticulously arranged with an eerie precision. There were no signs of disarray or anything out of the ordinary, but the deputies couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Wade's eyes seemed to follow them, his expression unreadable. As they reached the garage, Sheriff Daniels glanced at the area that Mrs. Thompson had reported. The tarp covering the stain was still in place, and the garage was as tidy as the rest of the house. Wade quickly covered the tarp with an air of casualness, dismissing any concern. "I'm in the process of cleaning up some old projects. That's probably what people have noticed." Sheriff Daniels glanced at the tarp, but decided not to press further. "All right, Mr. Wilson. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, please don't hesitate to contact us." After the officers left, the sense of unease in the town intensified. Emma Parker, who had seen Wade in the diner, couldn't shake the image of him sitting in that corner booth, his hands trembling. She mentioned the encounter to her friend Laura, who worked as a bartender at a nearby pub. Laura, intrigued by the mysterious circumstances, began to question the regulars, hoping to uncover more about Wade's behavior. One evening, as Laura was closing up the pub, she overheard a conversation between two strangers discussing Wade. The men were seated in a dimly lit corner of the bar, speaking in hushed tones. Laura strained to listen, her curiosity piqued. "I heard he's been seen meeting with some shady characters," one of the men said. "Rumor has it that he's into something dangerous, but no one's been able to prove anything." The other man nodded, his expression grim. "Yeah, and did you hear about the woman who disappeared last month? Some folks think it might be connected." Laura's heart raced as she absorbed the information. She decided to dig deeper, but her efforts to uncover more about Wade's connections proved fruitless. Every lead seemed to vanish, leaving her with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Wade's behavior became increasingly erratic. He was seen late at night walking through the neighborhood, his movements furtive and unsettling. His once neat appearance began to deteriorate, with unkempt clothes and a disheveled look. Neighbors who caught glimpses of him during these nocturnal wanderings felt a chill run down their spines. One particularly cold evening, as the fog rolled in and shrouded the town in an eerie haze, a resident named Carla Martinez was taking her dog for a walk. She noticed Wade standing on the edge of his property, staring into the distance with an expression of deep contemplation. The sight was so strange that Carla found herself crossing the street to avoid him. As she hurried home, the sound of a dog barking sharply cut through the fog. Carla glanced back to see Wade's silhouette disappearing into the mist, his figure merging with the darkness. The barking continued, growing more frantic, until it abruptly stopped. Carla's anxiety mounted as she quickened her pace, her footsteps echoing ominously in the fog. The next morning, a disturbing discovery was made. A neighbor's dog, known for its friendly nature, was found lifeless in the yard. The cause of death was unclear, but the circumstances surrounding its death only added to the town's growing sense of dread. The town of Brimfield was now on edge, its once serene streets haunted by the shadow of Wade Wilson's mysterious actions. As rumors and suspicions swirled, the community found itself grappling with a terrifying realization. Something dark and malevolent was lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect town. Sheriff Daniels, feeling the mounting pressure from both the community and his own instincts, knew that he needed to delve deeper into Wade Wilson's life. But with every step he took, the layers of mystery seemed to grow thicker, and the darkness that enveloped Wade became more impenetrable. As night fell over Brimfield, the town braced itself for what might come next. The chilling silence was occasionally broken by the distant sounds of muffled voices or the rustle of leaves, each sound amplifying the pervasive sense of unease. And somewhere, within the confines of the Wilson residence, the true nature of Wade Wilson's sinister activities remained hidden, waiting to be revealed. The unseen threat. The fog that had settled over Brimfield seemed to grow denser with each passing day, mirroring the murkiness of the town's collective sense of fear. The death of the neighbor's dog had cast a long shadow over the community, and the town's anxiety was palpable. Every creak, every rustle, seemed to echo with a deeper, more sinister meaning. Sheriff Daniels had begun to take a closer look at Wade Wilson's background, hoping to uncover some clue that would explain the mounting suspicions. He reviewed Wade's records, which were mostly unremarkable: no previous criminal activity, a clean record, and no known connections to any suspicious individuals. On paper, Wade appeared to be a model citizen, but the whispers and strange occurrences told a different story. One evening, after a particularly tense day of interviews and investigations, Sheriff Daniels returned to his office. He found a stack of reports and complaints, each detailing minor disturbances and odd behavior related to Wade. Among them was a peculiar note from Carla Martinez, the woman who had seen Wade in the fog. The note mentioned something strange she had overheard while walking her dog, but it was fragmented and lacked details. Determined to piece together the puzzle, Sheriff Daniels decided to revisit the scene where Carla had reported seeing Wade. As he approached the Wilson residence, he felt a shiver run down his spine. The house looked even more unsettling in the dark, with its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the night. Sheriff Daniels walked around the perimeter, his flashlight casting long shadows on the ground. As he inspected the area, he noticed a small, partially buried object near the edge of the yard. He dug it out and found a torn piece of fabric stained with what appeared to be a dark, reddish substance. The fabric was old and worn, and its origins were unclear, but it was enough to raise more questions. The next day, the sheriff sent the fabric to the lab for analysis, hoping it would provide some insight. Meanwhile, Emma Parker and Laura were still discussing their observations. They decided to take matters into their own hands and investigate further. Their curiosity had reached a boiling point, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of uncovering something significant. Emma suggested they try to speak with the mysterious man she had seen Wade with in the diner. They started by asking around the local businesses, hoping to find someone who might have seen or heard something. After several unsuccessful inquiries, Laura finally got a lead from a barista at a coffee shop who had seen the man in question. The barista described him as a tall, unkempt figure with a noticeable scar on his cheek. He often visited the coffee shop in the early hours of the morning, always alone and always with an air of discomfort. Emma and Laura decided to stake out the coffee shop, hoping to catch a glimpse of this mysterious individual. As they waited in the shadows of the coffee shop's dimly lit parking lot, the air grew colder and the tension mounted. Their breaths formed visible puffs of mist as they watched the entrance, their eyes darting to every passerby. Hours passed, and just when they were about to give up, the door creaked open, and the man with the scar emerged. Emma and Laura followed him discreetly, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The man led them to an old, dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building was in disrepair, with broken windows and a sagging roof. As the man disappeared inside, Emma and Laura exchanged nervous glances. They knew they were about to delve into something potentially dangerous, but their determination drove them forward. Inside the warehouse, the darkness was almost absolute, and the only sounds were the distant drip of water and the scurrying of rats. Emma and Laura crept carefully through the maze of crates and debris, their flashlight beams cutting through the gloom. They could hear muffled voices ahead, and as they approached, they saw the scarred man in conversation with another shadowy figure. From their vantage point, Emma and Laura could make out bits of the conversation. The two men were discussing a series of deliveries and payments, their voices low and urgent. The terms they used were vague, but the sense of secrecy and urgency was palpable. Suddenly, the conversation stopped, and the men fell silent. Emma and Laura held their breath, trying to stay hidden. After a tense few minutes, the men began to move towards the exit, their footsteps echoing ominously in the empty warehouse. Emma and Laura quickly retreated, their hearts racing as they made their way back to the parking lot. Once they were safely in their car, they reviewed what they had heard. The conversation had hinted at a larger, more complex operation, but the details were still unclear. The scarred man's connection to Wade Wilson remained elusive, but it was becoming apparent that Wade was part of something much bigger and more dangerous than anyone had initially suspected. Back at the Wilson residence, Wade was becoming increasingly agitated. The unsettling atmosphere in the town and the scrutiny from the sheriff had taken a toll on him. He paced the rooms of his house, his mind racing with anxiety and paranoia. He knew that his carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack, and he was desperate to keep his secrets buried. As the days went by, the tension in Brimfield reached a boiling point. The sheriff's investigation was gaining momentum, and the townspeople's fear was palpable. The town that had once been a beacon of peace and tranquility was now a place of shadows and secrets. Sheriff Daniels knew that time was running out. The clues were pointing towards a deeper, more sinister plot, and Wade Wilson was at the center of it. As he prepared to confront Wade once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The darkness that enveloped Brimfield was far from over, and the true extent of Wade Wilson's crimes remained hidden, waiting to be unveiled. The unraveling. The chill in the air was more pronounced as autumn deepened, and Brimfield's atmosphere was thick with anticipation and dread. Sheriff Daniels felt the weight of the investigation pressing down on him. The more he uncovered, the more he realized that Wade Wilson's dark secrets were only the tip of the iceberg. The town's tranquility had been shattered, and the truth was becoming increasingly elusive. The analysis of the fabric found near Wade's home had come back from the lab, revealing traces of blood. The sheriff knew this was a significant development, but the connection to any specific crime remained unclear. The fabric seemed to be a piece of a larger puzzle, and the more he delved into Wade's life, the more convoluted the picture became. Sheriff Daniels decided to revisit Wade's residence for a more thorough search. Accompanied by Deputy Harris, he approached the house with a sense of determination. Wade had been unusually cooperative in previous interactions, but the sheriff couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something crucial. Wade answered the door, his demeanor as calm and collected as ever. "Sheriff, Deputy, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "We're here to conduct a more detailed search," Sheriff Daniels said, trying to keep his tone professional. "We've received some new information, and it's important we follow up on it." Wade's expression remained unreadable as he stepped aside to let the officers in. "Of course. Please, make yourselves at home." As they searched the house, Deputy Harris examined the attic while Sheriff Daniels focused on the basement. The basement was dimly lit and cluttered with old furniture and boxes. As he moved aside a stack of boxes, he discovered an old, locked trunk. The trunk was covered in dust, suggesting it had been untouched for years. Sheriff Daniels picked the lock with practiced ease and opened the trunk. Inside, he found an assortment of old photographs, documents, and personal items. Among them was a journal with a worn cover, its pages filled with cryptic entries and disturbing sketches. The journal's content was deeply unsettling, hinting at dark rituals and a disturbing fascination with death. One entry caught the sheriff's eye. The perfect plan is almost complete. Soon, the true nature of the darkness will be revealed. The sacrifices are necessary for the greater good. The sheriff's heart raced as he read the entry. It was clear that Wade's interests extended far beyond simple criminal activities. The journal suggested a preoccupation with something far more sinister, something that involved ritualistic practices and a disturbing ideology. Meanwhile, Deputy Harris had discovered a hidden compartment in the attic. Inside, she found an assortment of strange objects, vials of unknown substances, a collection of old medical instruments, and several handwritten notes with incomprehensible formulas. The items appeared to be part of an elaborate and unsettling scheme. As the sheriff and deputy regrouped, they shared their findings. The evidence suggested that Wade was involved in something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The journal and the items in the attic indicated a macabre obsession with experimentation and ritual. Back in town, Emma Parker and Laura had been busy gathering more information. They had discovered that the mysterious man with the scar, whom they had seen in the warehouse, was known locally as Victor Hale, a drifter with a reputation for being involved in underground dealings. They learned that Victor had a history of criminal activity and was rumored to be involved in various illicit operations. Emma and Laura decided to confront Victor Hale. They tracked him to a dingy motel on the outskirts of Brimfield, where he was staying under an alias. The confrontation was tense and dangerous. Victor was wary and evasive, but after some prodding, he revealed that he had been working with Wade Wilson on a series of illicit activities. However, he was reluctant to divulge specifics, fearing for his own safety. Victor's cryptic remarks hinted at a deeper conspiracy involving powerful and dangerous individuals. He spoke of a network that extended beyond Brimfield, with Wade Wilson as a key player in a larger scheme. The information was vague, but it provided a crucial lead for Sheriff Daniels. As the days passed, the tension in Brimfield continued to escalate. The town was on edge, with rumors and speculation running rampant. People whispered about Wade's involvement in dark rituals and underground operations, but the truth remained elusive. Sheriff Daniels knew that he needed to act swiftly. The evidence they had uncovered pointed to a larger and more dangerous network that extended beyond Brimfield. He decided to ramp up the investigation and seek assistance from higher authorities. The case was growing more complex, and he needed every resource available to unravel the full extent of Wade Wilson's crimes. The sheriff also requested a search warrant for Wade's property to ensure that no further evidence was overlooked. With the warrant in hand, he prepared for a more comprehensive search, hoping to find conclusive evidence that would expose the full scope of Wade's activities. As night fell over Brimfield, the atmosphere was charged with an eerie stillness. The town's once peaceful streets were now fraught with an unsettling sense of anticipation. The sheriff's next move could be the key to uncovering the truth about Wade Wilson and the dark secrets he had hidden away. And somewhere, deep within the shadows of the Wilson residence, the dark forces at play waited with bated breath. The truth was about to be revealed, but the darkness that had enshrouded Brimfield for so long was far from over. The final chapter of this chilling saga was still yet to come. The Heart of Darkness. Sheriff Daniels and Deputy Harris arrived at the Wilson residence before dawn, the early morning fog shrouding the house in an even thicker layer of mystery. With a search warrant in hand, they approached the property with a sense of urgency. The previous findings had set the stage for a potentially explosive revelation, and they needed to be thorough in their search. As they entered the house, the tension was palpable. The once meticulously maintained interior now seemed oppressive, as if the walls themselves were harboring dark secrets. The sheriff and deputy split up to cover more ground, each focused on a different area of the house. Sheriff Daniels headed straight for the basement, determined to uncover any hidden evidence that might have been overlooked in their initial search. The basement, with its clutter and disarray, now seemed more ominous than ever. He began sifting through the boxes and crates, searching for anything that could provide more insight into Wade Wilson's activities. In a secluded corner of the basement, Sheriff Daniels discovered a hidden compartment behind a false wall. Inside, he found an array of disturbing items: old medical records, disturbing photographs of individuals in various states of distress, and a series of handwritten notes detailing what appeared to be human experiments. The notes included detailed observations and instructions, suggesting a series of gruesome procedures that defied explanation. As the sheriff reviewed the documents, he felt a growing sense of horror. The evidence pointed to a twisted experimentation process involving multiple victims. Wade's involvement in these experiments was becoming increasingly evident, and the depth of his depravity was far beyond what anyone had imagined. Meanwhile, Deputy Harris was conducting a meticulous search of the attic. Her eyes scanned every inch of the dusty space, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. Amidst the old furniture and forgotten possessions, she noticed a large, ornate chest hidden behind a stack of old blankets. The chest was adorned with strange symbols and markings, giving it an unsettling aura. Deputy Harris carefully opened the chest, revealing an assortment of items that sent a chill down her spine. Inside, she found ritualistic tools, including ceremonial daggers, ancient texts, and a book bound in a dark, leather-like material. The book's pages were filled with arcane symbols and disturbing illustrations depicting occult rituals. As she examined the items, Deputy Harris realized that these were not just random artifacts but crucial pieces of evidence related to the dark practices Wade had been involved in. The ritualistic nature of the items suggested that Wade's crimes were not just about personal gain but were driven by a deeper, more malevolent motive. Outside the house, Emma Parker and Laura had been following up on leads related to Victor Hale. Their investigation had led them to a contact within the local underground scene, a man named Jack Donovan. Jack was known for his connections with various criminal networks and might have valuable information about the network Victor had hinted at. Emma and Laura arranged a meeting with Jack in a secluded park. As they approached, they noticed the sense of danger in the air. Jack, a burly man with a rough demeanor, greeted them with a wary expression. "I hear you're looking for information on Wade Wilson and his crew," Jack said, his voice low and gravelly. "You're digging into some dangerous territory, you know." Emma and Laura explained their findings and the disturbing details they had uncovered. Jack listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. When they finished, he leaned back and sighed. "Wade Wilson's not just a small-time criminal," Jack said finally. "He's part of a larger organization that's involved in all sorts of illegal activities: drug trafficking, human trafficking, and worse. The rituals you've mentioned? Those are part of a twisted ideology they follow, involving sacrifices and dark rituals to gain power and control." Emma and Laura were taken aback by the revelation. The scope of Wade's criminal network was far beyond what they had imagined. Jack continued, "The organization operates in the shadows, but their influence is widespread. If you're looking for the truth, you need to dig deeper into their connections. Wade is just a piece of the puzzle." Armed with this new information, Emma and Laura returned to the sheriff's office to share their findings. Sheriff Daniels and Deputy Harris were already in the process of reviewing the evidence they had collected from the Wilson residence. The new information from Jack provided crucial context. The sheriff realized that the network they were dealing with was more dangerous and far-reaching than they had anticipated. The ritualistic aspects of Wade's activities indicated that he was deeply enmeshed in this dark organization, and their influence extended beyond Brimfield. As the investigation progressed, Sheriff Daniels began to formulate a plan to expose the full extent of the network's operations. The evidence gathered so far was enough to warrant a major operation to dismantle the organization and bring those responsible to justice. However, he knew that taking down such a powerful and secretive group would be fraught with danger. The next steps involved coordinating with federal authorities and other local law enforcement agencies to launch a comprehensive operation. The sheriff understood that the success of this mission hinged on their ability to gather more evidence and build a solid case against Wade and his associates. As night fell, The atmosphere in Brimfield was thick with anticipation. The town's residents could feel the tension in the air, knowing that the investigation was reaching a critical juncture. The sense of impending revelation and the potential for further darkness loomed over them, casting a long shadow on their once peaceful lives. The darkness that had enveloped Brimfield was about to be confronted head-on, and the true extent of Wade Wilson's crimes was on the verge of being unveiled. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, and the town's fate hung in the balance as the investigation continued to unravel the heart of darkness.